Hello, you're listening to Mike Madden on the Art Show podcast. Here you will find interviews with authors, musicians, artists and anyone else in and around the arts. Some of the interviews are taken direct from the Art Show on Expat Radio, with one or two specials in between. This show features actress and author Carol Drinkwater talking about her latest book, The House on the Edge of the Cliff. This is followed by something different for the Arts Show. Ollie reads A Day of Nothing by Caroline England, taken from her short story collection, Watching Horsepats Feed the Roses. It was originally broadcast on Expat Radio on Monday the 20th of May 2019. Due to licensing restrictions, we are unable to play the songs from the original broadcast. Hello, this is Mike Madden on the Art Show on Expat Radio, and tonight my very special guest is Carol Drinkwater. Good evening, Carol.
Good evening.
Now, Carol's not been on the show for quite some time. The last time was more than 12 months ago when you came on to talk about The Lost Girl. But now, a very exciting time for you. You've just launched your latest novel, The House on the Edge of the Cliff. So just give our listeners a little bit of a synopsis about that, obviously without giving too much away.
The House on the Edge of the Cliff is set between Paris and the south of France. It's a little bit in London, but they're the two most important locations. It's also set between Paris 1968, which was during the time of the student uprising, and it goes through right to the modern day time in the south of France. What happened is that our young protagonist, Grace, is 16 years old when she decides, before she's going to drama school, to go to Paris for a few short months before she sets off drama school. On her first day in Paris, she meets a young Englishman who's studying at the Sorbonne. And he introduces her to everything that's happening amongst the students and their life, which includes the student uprising. Something happens in her life that summer that haunts her. It stays with her during her years, and then it comes back. As someone described it, in a ferocious hand in the present to turn her life around. So it's a mystery, it's a romance, it's an epic love story, and it's set in France. And
you've been over in the UK promoting the book. So has this all been planned by your publisher, or is this just something you wanted to do?
I've done the planning for the tour. The publishers weren't necessarily up for it, so I got several invitations to come, and I'm going to Ireland to the Listowel festival. I'm going to be in Alicante, just near Alicante at Javia on Friday the 7th of June. So these are things that I was invited to do, and so I've put it together and created a little tour, as it were.
Right. I did notice that you were doing a tour of several Waterstones in the UK. One of which is in Altrincham, which is very close to where I was brought up.
Oh, well, come along.
Unfortunately, I'm probably going to be out of the country that week, but otherwise I would have done. I was from Sale originally, which is just down the road.
Oh, right. Yes, it is. What a pity.
Now, you've published several books in your career, and I noticed that you're very keen on Kindle singles. So is that driven commercially, or is that just something because you are so creative, you just want to get something out there?
Well, it's a mix of things, really. I was writing my olive farm books, which is a series of books set on our olive farm in the south of France, which are listed as memoirs, though in fact they're very much like novels, though based on truths, but they are like novels. And I was moving from them to go back to writing novels, and my agent got a call from Amazon saying that they were looking for established writers to come in and write novellas for them for their Amazon Kindle list, their library. And they asked me, and the first one I did sold over 100,000 copies quite quickly. And so I went on to do 4 altogether, and they've been incredibly successful. I love doing it. It's kind of like 30 to 35,000 words, whereas a novel is between 95 and 105. So, it's a shorter span of time that you have to spend on it. But at the same time, you still have to create an entire story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I love it. I think it's a wonderful challenge, and they're all set in France, and I've loved doing them.
Is it a noticeably different discipline to create a novella compared to a novel?
It's the same discipline about sitting down, getting on with it, coming up with a storyline. All those things are pretty much the same. But you do have to really make sure that every word counts because you've got less space, as it were, to tell your story. So it's a bit like you go on television, for example, or on radio, and you've got 5 minutes to say what it is you're up to compared to an hour. You have to make
Yeah, yeah.
sure that the few words that you use are succinct and to the point.
And it's quite an achievement to actually get Amazon to call you to put something on their platform. It's
Well, it was my agent they called. I mean, Jonathan represents some extremely high-profile writers, and they went to Jonathan and said, "Look, we're looking at your list, and we're interested in this person, and this person." And I happened to be one of them, and I jumped at the opportunity. So I was in the right place at the right time, and with the right set of people, as it were. So it's not just down to me; it's a combination of those things, as it usually is.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting that we always have different stories from authors that we get on the show about how they got into to be a published writer, and a lot of them use agents. So, how far back do you go with your agent?
I've been with Jonathan Lloyd, who is the managing director, or the chairman indeed now, of Curtis Brown, which is one of the biggest publishing houses in the world, literary agents in the world. I've been with Jonathan probably about 15 years. Before that, I was with the Ed Victor agency. Ed has recently died. I was with them for about 10 years, not with Ed personally, with one of his agents there. So I go back. I've almost always had an agent. I started out without one. My husband did my very first contracts, as he's a film producer. He knows about putting contracts together. He did the first one or two, and then I realized that in fact I did, because though his experience with contracts is second to none, publishing is slightly different to filmmaking. So I realized I needed somebody, and he also said I should get someone. And I joined a small agency called the Pollingers, Gina and Murray Pollingers, who are retired now. An excellent couple. And I was with them until I moved to Ed Victor and then to Curtis Brown. So I've had 3 altogether, and all of them top ranking.
Right. I also noticed that the Olive series, which you mentioned briefly, and which we'll probably come on to later, you've produced audiobooks of those, but you've produced them yourself on CD. Is it also something that can be downloaded, or is it just a CD?
Oh no, I haven't done them myself. I'm the voice. I've done all my books as audiobooks, not just
Ah,
the old
right.
one. All my books. I mean, it was about 20. I think about 20 out of the 24, including my Kindle singles, I've recorded as an audio book, and I'm the voice, the narration, narrative voice in all of them. Because as an actress, I like doing my own work. Obviously, I like to
Yes.
do it myself. They're all on. They can be downloaded from. I think it's called Audible on Amazon or all those platforms, and they can be bought as CDs, and they can be borrowed from libraries as well. I think that's how it all works.
Yeah, it's a great way of getting your work out there now, the audiobook. I've become a big fan of it. So yeah, hopefully that's all goes well. But it must be a challenge as well to narrate the book yourself, because I know from working with universities in getting students to narrate pieces of work that it's actually quite a different discipline to the writing itself.
Oh, it's completely different. I mean, it's the actress in me that comes to the. Um, and because I'm an actress, it also colours the way I write. So the two things do marry. But and I have to take off my writing hat when I'm in the studio and stop thinking I shouldn't have used that word. It would have been better if I'd used this word. That sort of thing, you know.
Yes. Now, as part of your UK tour, you're going to the Deepings Literary Festival in Lincolnshire, which is not one that springs to mind. I know there's a lot of literary festivals, but what's the background behind that one?
It's a very new literary festival. I think this is either the first or the second year. And they booked me over a year ago. I mean, I didn't even know that it was going to coincide with the publication of the book. They came through to me. It was a lady called Linda Hill, who is one of the most well-known and well-respected of these book bloggers, that you see on the internet, on Twitter and things.
Yeah.
And she came through to me and said, "We're doing a festival. Would you like to be a part of it?" And I didn't actually take it enormously seriously at that stage. And then she came through and she said, we're willing to offer this for your transport and all that kind of thing. And these are going to be the dates. And so I looked it up and I thought, well, I don't know anything about this. When I heard that it was going to be a new one, I thought it's terrific to support it because I'm all in favour of as many literary festivals as possible. Anything to help people get their work out there, because it's not easy now. And so I said I'd come along. And to my amazement, I find that it's 3 or 4 days and they've got a very prestigious list of authors coming.
Right.
And she came through to me in I think, February and said, your event is sold out. We're looking to see how we can put more chairs in. So I was quite taken aback by how well supported it's clearly going to be and the level and the status of it. It's really quite something to be reckoned with, I think.
Yes, and it must be difficult to get something like that off the ground because it's not instantly got the reputation of, for instance, the London Book Show or anything like that.
Exactly. So they seem to be working very hard. They're very on the ball. They've checked with me the time of my train coming in, my bank account, where I will be before. They've let me know about publicity. They've been really, really on the ball. I'm incredibly impressed.
Now, last time you were on, we spent a considerable amount of time discussing the Olive series, but we've got a lot of new listeners now. So just tell our listeners a little bit about the Olive series and how that came about.
Well, it's my personal love story, really. I was working as an actress in England, doing All Creatures Great and Small and various other things. And I got an offer to go to Australia to film in a children's miniseries in Melbourne. Actually, it's not fair to say I got the offer. I heard it was being cast and I fought like hell to get the part. That's actually what happened.
Right.
And they turned me down and then said I was too young. It's not often people say that these days. I was too young for the role. And so I went and got some photographs done with my hair all scraped back and no makeup on and sent them in and said, do I still look too young? Anyway, they gave me the part. And what I didn't know at the time was the executive producer was a Frenchman called Michel Noll, who I was supposed to meet in London before I started work in Melbourne filming. He came to London and we were going to have lunch together and he got called straight back to go to Paris on the plane. So the lunch was cancelled. So it wasn't until after I finished my filming in Melbourne and I went up to Sydney. I'd been doing some diving on the Barrier Reef and then went to Sydney to meet agents and do some promotion and things. And he happened to be staying in the same hotel. He invited me for a drink. The next evening, he took me out to dinner, and before we'd even eaten the first course, he asked me to marry him. So, of course, I didn't take him.
Can you remember what the first course was?
Prawns, I think. I do know we had a bottle of Chardonnay because I immediately took a slug of that when he asked me. I thought, this can't be serious. And I didn't take him seriously, but the next morning I saw him at breakfast and he said that he'd had a very nice evening. And I said, so did I. And he said, you didn't answer my question. And I didn't, I just said, listen, I didn't take you seriously. So he said, I'll call you. And he's called me every day. That was 35 years ago. We've been married now since 1988. And here I am sitting in our house in France. And we didn't get married straight away. It took 4 years. And we bought an olive farm in the south of France. We didn't know it was. I'd been looking for what I described as my house by the sea all over the world. And he was going to be in Cannes for the film and television festivals. And he said, do you want to come down and join me? Which I did. We were at that stage beginning to spend time together, but still I was living in London and he was living in Paris. And so we met up in Cannes. And while he was busy doing deals, I went looking for my house by the sea. And the estate agent said, oui, bien sûr, madame, this is the south of France. We have plenty of houses by the sea. How much have you got to spend? And I told them my paltry sum. And they said, not for that money, madam. So on the Saturday, Michel, we still weren't married or anything, but he came with me looking for houses. He'd finished his work. And there was nothing for the money that I had, which was a very small sum. And he said, is there a ruin or something we could do up? And the estate agent took us to a field with one wall. And Michel said, well, I think that's too much of a ruin. I said, listen, this isn't what I had in mind. And then he took us to this place. He said, look, there's no gate, there's no fencing or anything, so we can go and visit. It's been empty for 10 years. It was an olive farm and a vineyard. And we had a lovely view over the Bay of Cannes. And it was a jungle. And we fell in love with it. And that was the beginning of our story of the olive farm. And I've written 4 books set there, 2 books set around the Mediterranean as I went traveling in search of the history of the olive tree. Then I got invited by UNESCO to be part of the olive route. They wanted to create as UNESCO does, it makes heritage sites of certain places, and they wanted to create a heritage site of the olive route. So they brought me in as an expert. And I seem to have become the Queen of Olives, people call me, which is a long way for all creatures great and small.
It's a great title. It is a wonderful story, but it's time for us to go for a break now. So you found yourself in France, and we're going to play Bonnie Tyler and Lost in France.
Expat Digital Radio, online 24/7.
Hello, you're listening to Mike Madden on The Art Show on Expat Radio, and don't forget to visit our website, expatradio.uk. Tonight, my special guest is Carol Drinkwater. Welcome back, Carol.
Thank you. Hello again.
And before the break, we touched on your career in the field of drama as Helen Herriot in All Creatures Great and Small. But you were also in the National Theatre Company under the leadership of Laurence Olivier. So what was that like?
I loved working with Larry. He was very good to me. He took me under his wing. He later said to somebody that I was one of the 2 best actresses he'd ever worked with, which was one I've never found out who the other one was, which was rather extraordinary considering who he's worked with. But no, he was wonderful to me, and it was a rare and very special opportunity. I think I was 18 months in the company, and then Larry left and Sir Peter Hall took over. And I left and went off traveling and to do other jobs and all kinds of things, and to kind of get out there and have other experiences as an actress. But it was a very special time for me, and I worked with some really great actors, including, of course, Olivier himself, who always was telling us wonderful stories about his life, which was, I think, he's a great storyteller. Great storyteller.
Right.
On her.
But he never gave you a clue as to who this other actress was.
No. I suppose Joan or Vivian Lee. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Vivian and Carol. Not often in that league.
But you had a colourful career in acting with Bouquet of Barbed Wire, Clockwork Orange, and Chucky, which brings me in a roundabout way of saying John Wyndham, who wrote Chucky, was a person that I grew up loving his writing. So who inspired you to first get into putting pen to paper?
Oh, I've been writing since I was about 8. I wanted to act from about the age of 5 because my father was in entertainment. He was a musician, and my family on his side were in the entertainment business. So it was quite natural in a way that I would go into, they probably thought more light entertainment, but my breakaway was to be more serious. But I was writing from the age of about 8. I kept diaries, I kept books with big words, and I read Shakespeare and put words like coxcomb and those kind of things that I didn't understand in this great big green book, which I've still got somewhere. So words and plays and the idea of writing plays, it was something with me from my childhood. It was while I was doing All Creatures and, of course, James Herriot, Alf White. He also was a great raconteur, not just in his writing, but also at dinner table. He would tell us sometimes the same stories that we'd read and then filmed, and we'd still laugh. And I thought I learned a lot from Alf because, he's not heavy-handed. He is not in any way superior to his readers. He doesn't look down upon them. He doesn't in any way try to alienate readers. And I thought at the time when I was working on his material and with him, as it were, I thought, knowing that I wanted to write, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to look to see what made his work so popular. And I think without even really realizing it, I learned a lot from him and his art of storytelling. And I think it was during that period that I thought I really must get on and do this. And then when I met Michel in Australia, the man I'm now married to, he said, look, if that's what you want to do, I will stand behind you and support you in doing that as well. And that's how it's turned out. It's been very fortunate for me.
And you mentioned that you kept diaries and notebooks. Is that something that you still do today? Or is it now just sort of scratched notes on a laptop or something like that?
No, I don't do the diary anymore. Unfortunately, I think it's a pity that I don't. Because I don't have the time, and in some ways, kind of Facebook becomes in lieu of that because one's writing uh, remarks about. It's not the same thing, of course, and it's not as intimate, of course. But I think that energy, that intimacy and act of putting something down on paper goes into my writing, into my professional writing now, because I think that my work is quite intimate in its storytelling and very personal. So even in the novels, I think that's true. Even in this new one, The House on the Edge of the Cliff, though it's not my story. The protagonist is an actress, and I think some of my own experiences in there, though I haven't done what she's done. Or been through what she's been through, but so the diaries have really got into the day-to-day writing now.
I do know that you've got a fascinating website and you write regular newsletters and a blog. So you are constantly writing. And while I was bouncing around that website, I found a link and came across the History Girls.
Yes.
So just explain about the History Girls.
Well, the History Girls was started by a very wonderful woman called Mary Hoffman, who's a writer, a Cambridge graduate of literature, and she thought that perhaps, I mean, there's often the argument that men get far more coverage for their writing than women. So she said, let's start a blog of 28 history girls. So there's one for each day of the month. And then the days that go over, which is all months except February, of course, that go over 28 days, there is a competition on one day, and there's something called a curious object, historical objects on another day. So there are 28 of us altogether, and each one of us has our own specific day. I'm the 26th of the month. So on the 26th of every single month, I post on the History Girls blog site, www.historygirlsblog.com. I post something. It might be about my new book. It might be about the research I've done for Paris 68. It might be about my travels. It might be about the history of pesticides, for example, I've written about. I wrote about a whale museum in Biarritz. I tend to centre my history girls around France or around my travels, because all the others are doing lots of other direct history, medieval history or something. And I'm more interested in modern history, 20th century history. So I tend to post about that. And I absolutely love it. Sometimes I think, my goodness, I'm not going to get this done this month. But once I settle down to it, it's a terrific challenge, and I'm very proud to be a part of this group of women, all of whom are women to be respected and renowned, and hard at work as writers, fiction, children's, whatever it happens to be.
And it must be, like you say, are you going to get it done? It is a real deadline every single month.
Yes, has to be posted by midnight on the 25th. Ready to go out the next morning. So, in the beginning, when I wasn't sure how to work the website, it was a terrible trauma for me. But now that's not the trauma. But getting it done in time, particularly like, for example, May, with all my busy commitments for The House on the Edge of the Cliff, the new novel, there are, those kind of deadlines become things that you think, oh, I don't want it, but it's still worth doing it, and I absolutely love it.
I also found that you are very much into bee awareness and the importance of bees. And I think from back when I was a child, bees and wasps were kind of lumped in together. But of course, bees are very different creatures. And I think through social media, the world is becoming a lot more aware of bees. But what's your take on the state of the bees today?
Well, this is a fight. I mean, I've been part of this organic or environmental movement since I was at drama school. I joined Greenpeace when I was at drama school and was marching soon after I left drama school for one reason or another. So this is something very dear to my heart. And then when I started writing my books set at the olive farm, the olive season, those books, and because we got bees then, we had 12 hives, I was able to talk about it as a personal experience, and therefore begin to show the dangers of pesticides and using so many chemicals on the land, because it happened to us when we first went there. As I said, it was a jungle. And once we cut the land back, we found that we had these 68 400-year-old olive trees. We had to find someone to help us farm them. And we found this old Provençal man called René, who came in and taught me everything really I know about olive farming in the beginning. And but then he started spraying the trees with all these horrible chemicals. And so the land that we'd had as a jungle when we first went there, which was full of bees and butterflies and all kinds of different birds, suddenly after several years, I said to Michelle, have you noticed that there's much less fauna on the land now? And he said he had noticed. And I said, I wonder what that's about. And then when I started doing my travels for the olive route, the two travel books, The Olive Root and The Olive Tree, and I went all the way around the Mediterranean. I took 17 months doing it. I saw the places, particularly in Spain, where the overuse of pesticides and chemicals had killed off everything else and was creating desertification and aridity on the earth, those kind of things. And I began to put the whole picture together, and I realized that this was a fight that I really did need to involve myself in. And so I've been vocal in this area for a very long time, and I'm now seeing that, in fact, the movement is being taken more seriously. I hope not too late, because the bees are in danger, and the numbers of bees and pollinators in general, and that does include wasps, Mike. I mean, do you know that fig trees, for example, there's no flower on a fig tree, which is normally how a plant is pollinated by a butterfly or a bee going to the flower and taking the nectar. There's no flower on a fig tree. There is a special wasp called the fig wasp that goes inside the very, very tiny bud of the fruit and pollinates inside the fruit. Isn't that extraordinary? Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. No.
So wasps also have their role to play. So, I mean, I think we've become I think it's something that came from America post or maybe just pre-Second World War, when I was writing for the History Girls about the history of pesticides. I looked all this up, and it's about 150-year cycle now that since pesticides first started being used. And in America, I mean, they were using lots of really harmful chemicals on the land, and these have made a huge difference. And there was a lot of advertising at the time to create a fear of bugs, the word bug. They bug us. They are dangerous. And you do still see commercials where the bug is the enemy, the insect is the enemy. And that's where we've got to start to try and change people's awareness and thinking, because the bugs are not our enemies. They're out there creating our food and the world in which we live, our environment. So it's a big thing for me, and I feel very passionate about it.
I know as well, you're very active on social media, and of course, awareness, it's a great medium to get awareness of all these olives and insects and pesticides and that kind of thing. And also to promoting your own book, because there are not many authors who can give away a litre of homegrown olive oil along with their book.
No, that's right. Love Reading have been giving away 3 copies of The House on the Edge of the Cliff, plus one of the 3 also will get a litre of our organic hand-picked olive oil from the farm, yes. That's quite exciting.
So where do you see the social media going? Because I know there's been talk about censorship and all that kind of thing, but to me it's a great tool, but you just have to use it carefully and do your research when something jumps out at you.
I think it's very important to know. I mean, we have a kind of knee-jerk reaction, which I'm trying to train myself not to get into, which is you see something and you repost it immediately without checking it. And I think that's the big danger. And I think that's where alt-right movements and political extremists of one sort or another, be they left, right, whatever they are, extreme dogmas and things, are using social media to manipulate us. And I think that's a big, big danger. And we need to be aware. I think not post something without checking on the facts, to make sure that we are actually, if we're going to support something, to make sure that it actually is correct, that the facts that are being posted there are not just made up or being posted there to manipulate us. I mean, there are certain figures within English politics, whose names I won't mention, who are getting far, far too much airtime and social media time. And there's whole movements pushing these people and making them more and more icons of one thing or another. Extremism, the icons of extremism. And I think we need to be very, very conscious of that. And I mean, I try not to use it for any of that stuff. I do use it to promote my books, and most certainly to promote the environment. But other than that, I try to be quite impartial and just use it for more jokey things, like what I'm doing here in France, or, much lighter matters, really.
Yeah. Now, you're still an actress. So
yes, I'm an unemployed actress, I suppose you might say.
Well, resting, I think they call it. So let's say somebody rang you up now with an offer of a job. What would you absolutely say yes to without hesitation, and what would you absolutely say no to?
Well, I I do still get occasional offers, not so many now, but I can't go and tour because that takes way too much of my time, and I've got the farm to look after and the writing to do, and so I can't do anything that's a really long commitment. That's everyday commitment. I'd love to have a wonderful role in a television series, a kind of Mrs. not in terms of the actual character, but a Mrs. Pumphrey size role in it. So I'd love something like that, or a lead in a television series would also be wonderful, but that's not going to happen, I don't think, right now. Or cameos in films, even small budget films. That's the sort of thing I'm actually looking for, really, if I'm going to do something. Or just a one-off guest appearance on television would be lovely too. Something like that.
Right. Well, we look forward to seeing you when all these producers are casting. We look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
We're running out of time now, so in the minute or so we've got left, just tell our listeners where they can find out a little bit more about you and your olive farm and your books and your blogs.
Well, can I first just promote the Friday 7th of June in Javier in Spain, because I'm sure you've got loads
Absolutely
there. It's I'm going to be talking at 5:00 at a place. Now, can I pronounce this? It's called Carabaish Vinalopo 8, and it's in the most wonderful Mediterranean gardens called La Albada Gardens, and it's on a site called Todos Juntos Javier. It's in Javier, and I'm sure you've got loads and loads of listeners there, and Denia, who I'd love to come along and see me there. Aside from that,
I'm sure we have.
Yes, I'm sure you have. It's filled with lots and lots of lovely expat people there. The new book, The House on the Edge of the Cliff, which I spoke about earlier, is the book that's taking up my attention at the moment, because that's what I'm out promoting. And as I said, it's kind of Manchester, York, Ireland, and then I should be back at the farm working on the book that I'm writing at the moment. Our farm, www.caroldrinkwater.com is my website, and that keeps people up to date with what I'm doing, where my books can be bought or won in competitions, because there's quite a few competitions being run this summer. And my newsletter, sign up for my newsletter, which I write. It's a kind of seasonal. I can't do it every month because of all the rest of my commitments. A seasonal newsletter, so spring, autumn, that sort of thing. And people love that. They enjoy that. It's a bit about the farm and a bit about my work and maybe a bit about my private life. Not too much, but, people enjoy the way. And lots of pictures. I usually put up pictures of the dogs and things like that.
It is a fascinating website, and you can also follow a few links and you will get to learn all about the History Girls as well. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much for coming on, and I hope we don't leave it sort of 15 months until the next time you appear on the radio.
No, I hope not. It's lovely to hear that your listenership is growing, and that the whole expat radio is getting to be a bigger thing. That's terrific. Well done, Mike. I really do.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's mainly down to Dave, but of course he's thinking about expat TV next, so maybe that television appearance isn't too far away.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Now, of course, your garden will be full of olives and flowers, and we're now going to play out with "You Don't Bring Me Flowers" with Barbara Streisand and Neil Diamond.
You're listening to Expat Radio. You're listening to Expat Radio, beaming out across France and around the world.
You're listening to Mike Madden on The Art Show on Expat Radio, and that was the wonderful Carol Drinkwater, and she really does have a fantastic website, so go and check it out. But as Monty Python might say, now it's time for something completely different. Next week on the show, we have best-selling author Caroline England, but before that, we have a sneak preview of her short story collection, Watching Horsepats Feed the Roses. It's story time, so sit back, grab your mug of hot chocolate and listen to the very talented Ollie reading Caroline England's A Day of Nothing.
A day of nothing. Waking to black and white yet again. He wrenches his mind into focus. Bank holiday Monday. A day of nothing. Closes his ears to the thrum of traffic and the cheerful bloody birds. For seconds, the ringtone confuses him. He changed at the same time he deleted her number. He'd like to switch it off forever. Executes an act of absolute finality to the fucking thing. But he needs it for work. And his parents. He knows that it's her. She never uses his landline. Likes an instant response, and he always obliges. "I think I'm in love, Jamie," she immediately says. "Are you around this morning?" Closing his eyes, the sparks of colour fly. Where the hell does the tatter of hope come from? She slumps opposite him on the sofa, threads her naked legs through his, and though he tries, he can't block the smell of her lemon shampoo nor the balm of her soft flesh against his. Closing his eyes, he lets her talk. "Jamie, did you hear what I said?" she asks. Oh yes, he's listening. He likes the sound of her voice. Lets it wash over him without taking in a word. "Well, what do you think?" She's peering at him. Her face bare of makeup. She has dark hollows beneath her eyes and her chin is blemished with spots. "I think you should get more sleep," he replies. He watches her lips shape the words from his bedroom. "Open a window, Jamie," she's saying. "Let in some fresh air." Same as always. A glance up before she climbs in the car. A smile, a small wave. Her parting gift. Remember me, think of me, want me. The window stays shut. Looking down at his t-shirt, he studies the orange stain. An amoeba of grease surrounds it. Last night's chicken tikka masala. For now his heart is in spasm. He's glad he was dirty and smelly. He's bloody elated he wasn't a sap. Clenching his fist, he punches the air and heads for the shower. The sun's shining. It's bloody shining outside. He pelts for the 142 bus, but doesn't give a toss when the smirking driver slows down, yet doesn't halt. Keeps on walking down Wilmslow Road, stop to stop. His shirt stuck to his back. Finally, he's so close to town that the fare's not worth it. Focuses his eyes. Gemini Cafe's changed hands. Townley Building's been demolished. Another Tesco Metro, right next to an Aldi. A cycle shop warehouse in Rusholme. An empty Lloyd's TSB. All the things he'd looked at last week but didn't see. Closing his eyes, he smiles. He hasn't looked at his mobile for hours. "Can I help you with a size?" the woman asks. She's pretty. Even takes the clothes to the cubicle and hangs them with a smile. "Call if there's anything else you need." He pulls on the jeans and stares at the mirror. A man he loathes gapes right back. Disgust blocks his throat. He can't breathe, he can't swallow. Tight bloody jeans. And Selfridges too. He hates fitted fucking jeans, but he's trying them on. Just for her. The smack brings him back. A willful thwack against the image. "Everything okay?" he hears beyond the door. Lifting his eyes to mirror, he breathes. Save for a red smear on the glass, life's back to grey. "Couldn't be better," he replies. The 142 trundles home. His head painfully throbs. He's tired. Weary of life being on repeat. Fed up of being so bloody predictable. Closing his eyes, he pictures torment captured in monochrome anyway. It always kicks in sooner or later. Slide by slide, legs thrown over his on the sofa, tiptoe kisses at the door, white even teeth, hair twisted in slim fingers, occasional tears, his hand vibrating with the judder of the bus. He stares at his mobile. A smug icon of an envelope winks, but it isn't from her. She's told him her latest news. His usefulness for now has expired. The text is from his mother. A skill acquired from months of waiting at Christie's. Message after message, mother to son, until the medics gave up. "Don't forget dinner. Dad's next in line. Can you believe we're still waiting?"
Sure someone's jumped the queue. Alice is here. Wish we'd gone private. The consultant seems nice. Are you all right, James? Haven't seen you in ages. Dad says hello.
Sun becomes rain without warning, flattening his hair, dripping from his nose. His shirt plasters to his chest and his teeth chatter, but he doesn't feel it. His mind is in overdrive, keeping him warm. Why didn't he listen this morning? The who, what, when, especially the who. Who has she fallen in love with this time? Angus, she said. Who the hell is Angus? And then, what's the point? Nothing he can do. Emasculated. Powerless. The need to puke stops him short. Leaning against a wall, he heaves out the bile on some poor bastard's steps to his cellar. Stripes of colour explode at the back of his eyes, and with it comes clarity. A way to stop the endless bloody cycle of conflict. The wanting, the need, the lust. Corrosive lust. As simple as that. He can do it. He really can. His mother's at the sink. She doesn't turn around and he's glad. Anything to postpone her painted, cheerful face a little while longer.
Dinner's on the table in 5 minutes, she says to the soap bubbles. Why do you always leave it so late, James? Better say hello to Dad first. Be careful those stairs. Alice is already up there.
In the attic room, his dad has shrunk again. Another tiny pucker into yellowing flesh. He hates him for dying, for losing his strength. He loathes the wasting stranger left behind. How's it going, Dad? He asks.
Better for seeing you, son.
He puts out a hand, his fleshless grasp strong.
Son?
Closing his eyes, James sees nothing but black, wishes he could pull away from the steady grip, the stifling room, his sickly house, and he knows it's coming. He wants to cover his ears and bolt, but his dad's wheeze is laboured, much worse than before.
James, son, promise me you'll look after your mother and your sister when I'm gone.
There's movement behind him, a gentle hand on his back.
More like me looking after Jamie, Dad. And don't worry, I will.
Stripping back his eyelids, he turns to his sister.
What have you done to your face?
She asks. Her forehead creased. Alice gazes, then explores the cut with soft fingers.
What's going on, Jamie? How did you do it? It wasn't there this morning.
His knuckles bone white on the banister. He waits for his sister at the top of the stairs. The batter of his heart burns his ears. The resolve is still there. He can do it. He can. He pulls back against the wallpaper to let her go first. But she stops on the landing, wraps her arms around his waist and leans her head against his chest. A moment on hold. Sweating profusely, he inhales the sweet smell of lemons. Her breath strokes his cheek.
I will look after you, Jamie. I promise,
she whispers. A rainbow of fantasy shoots through his veins. He had a plan. He knows he had a plan, but he's lost it for now. Pulling away, she takes his hand.
Come on, little brother. Dinner's waiting. Did I tell you this morning that Angus wears these really tight designer jeans?
And she smiles her smile with white, even teeth.
Expat Digital Radio, online 24/7.
This is Mike Madden on The Arts Show on Expat Radio, and don't forget to check out our website, expatradio.uk. You can also get in touch with us through the website or our Facebook page. Now, that was Ollie reading A Day of Nothing by Caroline England from the collection Watching Horsepats Feed the Roses, available on Amazon. So, if you would like Ollie to read your short story, let us know. There will be more from him over the coming weeks. So, is A Day of Nothing a perfect day? Well, if you really want to know, here is Lou Reed and Perfect Day. You've been listening to the Arts Show podcast with Mike Madden. Come back soon for more artists, authors, musicians and anyone else connected with the arts. We're going to play out with Mike Sanchez and I Don't Stand a Chance.
Baby, you hiding something that you don't want me to know. getting a vibe from way down the side, like you're just about ready to go. And you can't tell me where you stayed last night. You just can't cope with treating me right. I'm on the road to heartbreak. Now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know and I can't make you dance. Well, I said goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. Now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize